It's after Easter, the peak season, when ducks and ducklings bought for the holiday end up abandoned. That is, until a PETA employee in his free time rescues hundreds of ducks every year. How unlucky ducks get lucky, next on the PETA Podcast. Welcome to the PETA Podcast. I'm Emil Guillermo, your host for this inside look at PETA, the largest animal rights organization in the world. On today's episode, what do PETA employees do in their free time? Well, when you're John D. Leonardo, you don't have time to relax or watch sports. You're too busy rescuing domestic ducks, released into the wild or in public places because owners have no use for them after getting them for Easter or for a science project. Enter D. Leonardo on Long Island, who has rescued ducks and adopted them out or put them in sanctuary since 2014. Ordinarily the senior manager for PETA's Animals in Entertainment campaign and grassroots campaigns, D. Leonardo talked to me about how his interest evolved to where his new goal is to teach others to start sanctuaries or adopt out ducks around the country. That's how bad this problem is. If you want to adopt a duck, D. Leonardo talks about that too. Any duck abandoned after Easter who meets D. Leonardo can be considered a lucky duck. Here's my conversation with John D. Leonardo about how he saves ducks in his free time on the PETA Podcast. You know, when we talked to you about the Iditarod recently, and I guess a lot of people don't understand when PETA people have free time, they continue to work for the animals, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Outside of my responsibilities at PETA, I run a local nonprofit on Long Island called Long Island Orchestrating for Nature with my wife. We're the leading animal advocacy organization out in this area. And we're also one of the major waterfowl rescues and really one of the major just domestic fowl rescues in general in our area.
Yeah. So now you said the Long Island is Long Island Orchestrating for Nature, which spells out the acronym LION.
Correct.
Which
yes.
aren't necessarily fond of waterfowl, I guess, right? Lions?
Yeah, no, we were actually founded as a circus protesting group. So the name fit well back then. And but thankfully, we eliminated all the circuses on Long Island. We protested outside every single Cole Brothers circus show for about 3 years, and we saw attendance, be decimated at many of the locations. And then in 2015, we actually got their Cole Brothers circuses permits to operate in Islip permanently rejected. Mm-hmm. So they lost a long-standing venue. The Associated Press covered it, and someone in New Jersey saw it and said, "Hey, how did you do that? I want to do that in my backyard too." Yeah. And I worked with her to get them locked out of West Deptford, New Jersey as well. So between those cancellations and the ongoing decline of people going to the circus, they just couldn't afford to operate anymore. And Cole Brothers has not been seen since. Wow. We also got Piccadilly Circus canceled at West Hempstead, not far from me, Memorial Day weekend one year. And they were just trying to venture out here for the first year. And they realized very quickly, hey, it's not friendly territory over there, and they never came back.
So this is a real grassroots effort to ban circuses, and you've been really ultra successful, really.
Absolutely. Yeah, we kicked out all the circuses here. We kicked out the rodeos here as well. We moved on to all the fairs that had animal acts, and we got commitments from all of them to not host any wild animal acts, and many of them won't even host any petting zoos either as well. So we've made much progress, great progress on the animals entertainment issue here on Long Island. I mean, there's always work to be done, but what we found was, when we were spending so much time protesting these circuses and these wild animals at the fair, this was, spring and summer season. And during that same season, it was post-Easter, post-school hatching projects. People were just abandoning chickens and ducks to parks and ponds all over Long Island. And we were busy protesting. We didn't know this was such an issue. Yeah. So once we freed ourselves up, that's the next thing we took on.
All right, so you were successful banning the circuses, and instead of resting on your laurels, lo and behold, there's another problem. And the abandonment of wildfowl and these other wild animals, that became lions' next cause or their next action. How bad is it when it comes to wildfowl in your area and in general?
Well, that's a good question, and I'd like to clarify too that these are domestic fowl; they're not wildfowl. A lot of people um, uh, don't understand that distinction. They think, a duck is a duck. But domestic ducks have tiny wings, large bodies. They were bred for the farming industry. Long Island actually used to be, Pekin ducks. They used to call the Long Island duck because they were farmed by the, hundreds of millions here. Thankfully, there's only one factory farm still doing that to ducks on Long Island, and we hope that they will go under soon. But these ducks are they're as genetically distinct from wild ducks as a Chihuahua is from the ancient wolf that they also descended from.
Well, tell me, domesticated ducks, because you're talking about ducks that have been bred for food and then taken in, and then that's how they're domesticated. Because to distinguish them from the wild fowl. Is that how you get the domestic duck?
Yeah, domestic ducks were typically bred for the farming industry, and now some were also bred for the pet industry. In both cases, they typically come from hatcheries, which are factory farms. Most people, they want a limited number of male ducks or no male ducks at all. So just like they kill the roosters in mass for the egg industry, they do the same things to male ducklings.
So they have duck sexers in the same way they have chicken sexers at the factory farms, huh?
Absolutely. Yep. You got your one conveyor belt that goes to the pen where they're, or the bucket where they're keeping the girls. And they got the other conveyor belt that is going to that garbage bin or that macerator where they're grinding up these male ducklings or these male chicks alive.
Wow. And so the males don't survive. The males don't get out of that situation, out to, get adopted or anything like that.
No, these hatcheries, they're factory farms. They're not adoption agencies. Typically even your local municipal shelter doesn't even know what to do with domestic ducks. That's one of the reasons that they're dumped so frequently. People will buy an animal for Easter or do a school hatching project, and then they won't want to care for these ducks because they're very cute when they're little, and I think they're cute when they grow up, but they're also a lot of work. Yeah. They can live 10 to 15 years. They poop about every 6 minutes, and it's always loose poops. It is not nice to clean up. So they're a lot more work than even chickens are.
Yeah. And when you talk about these domestic ducks, you're talking either ducks that essentially they're females, right? Or they're eggs and they hatch. That's how they hatch the males. But generally, if they're farmed or they come out of the factory farms, they're going to be females. Right.
Most of them. So yeah. They do have some males. They don't macerate necessarily all the males, because some people want males and obviously they need a breeding stock as well. Right. But the vast majority of them are females. Most people will recommend having 6 female ducks to 1 male duck. So that's a great number of males that are unwanted. Yeah. Typically, when people will buy them, they'll either buy them sexed for an additional fee, and they're almost guaranteed a female, or supposedly they're being told. But we get calls all the time from people saying that, hey, I ordered ducks, they were supposed to be female, but they ended up being male. So we hear that all the time.
You're talking about the eggs? They go in and check the embryos, or are you talking about
the ducklings? Yeah, the ducklings. So, sometimes people order eggs and they'll hatch them themselves, and there's no way to know then. At that stage, you're just testing your luck whether you get boys or girls. But some people, they will order from the farm. They'll say, hey, I want a 1-day-old little duckling and I want females. So they'll sex them, often incorrectly. They will send them out, and they'll often mail them without food, without water, from California to New York City. When New York City, they're even illegal. We get calls all the time about animals that were shipped illegally. maybe the person who ordered them gave the incorrect address. Or we had one call last year actually about someone who shipped 16 baby roosters to someone in New York City as a prank. So, I mean, the regulations for these animals, whether they're in the factory farms or whether they're in the mail, are basically nil. I mean, they're shipped without food, without water, and shipped in infancy.
And where are they coming from? You mentioned California, but they're coming from all over the nation?
Yeah, they're being shipped from factory farms all over the country. Yeah, there's major factory farms in a lot of Midwest states, a lot of Western states, and they're shipping them, all over at just a day old. So many of these ducklings don't survive. Many of these chicks don't survive. There's very, very few laws protecting these animals. I mean, all birds are exempt from the Animal Welfare Act. They're exempt from the Humane Slaughter Act. So on the factory farms, they basically have almost no protections. And then, thankfully, FedEx and UPS have agreed to no longer ship live animals because of the cruelties associated with it. But USPS is still shipping these animals, and the mortality rate is so high that often these factory farms will throw in a bonus chick or a bonus duckling because they expect one or more to die, and they're just trying to plan in advance before they get that angry phone call from their consumer.
Wow, so the U.S. Postal Service still shipping these. So
yes.
So probably this is Easter time. We just came out of the holiday, but now this is your busy time when people are calling you wondering, what do we do with these chicks that we were given, or what do we do with these eggs that didn't hatch or hatched or whatever?
The beginning of March, it starts picking up. We start picking up birds that are being abandoned pre-Easter, usually about a year old. So my theory is they're last year's ducklings that people didn't want anymore because they want to get the new ducklings in. So they discard them to the public ponds like they're trash, and then they order a new set to come in for the Easter holiday.
So
this is incredibly cruel. I mean, these ducks, they're not science experiments. They're not Easter gifts, and they're not trash to be discarded when you don't want them anymore. They're thinking, feeling animals just like any dog or cat.
Yeah. So what happens is that people who got them 1 year, like you said, they're 1 year old now, they say, we want new ones because we want that Easter experience. And so they go to a local park that has a pond and they just kind of like release them.
Yeah, they abandon them right at the local pond, and most of them die within 24 hours of being dumped. I mean, because these are basically companion animals that someone, raised in their home without their mother and father, never learning how to properly care for themselves, never growing up in the wild. And even if they were growing up in the wild, I mean, they would never survive to long enough to learn the skills in order to survive. I mean, they have tiny wings, large bodies. They can't fly. They don't migrate. So typically, they're killed almost immediately by predators. And if they do manage to survive, maybe they saw their friends get massacred, and now they're a little wise. They live a terrified life. And until they die from either a bacterial infection or starvation, or they freeze come winter.
Yeah. What's surprising is that people, if it's that 1 year cycle, it's surprising that people had the ducks and they domesticated them. You would think that after a year, maybe they got used to them and they were their companions and they would want to keep them, or maybe they're just too difficult to domesticate. What's your experience?
Well, there's a difference between taming an animal and domesticating an animal. The domestication process takes many generations. In the case of these ducks, Pekin ducks have been domesticated for thousands of years. So it's not a matter so much of someone raising them and they become domesticated. No matter what, these animals have just been inbred to have those tiny wings, to have to be more susceptible to illnesses, and to be more to have less instincts, enabling them to survive in the wild. So when people abandon them there, they just have no chance. Yeah. But even on top of that, I mean, even if people don't care about those individual lives, these animals are wreaking havoc in the in the ecosystems that they are dumped in as well, they may have diseases that they can pass to wild flocks. I mean, we just rescued 4 domestic ducks in Staten Island that someone abandoned, and 3 out of 4 of them had bumblefoot, which is like a staph infection, a bacterial infection in their feet, which, if left untreated, will go to their bloodstream, will go to their bone, and will kill them. So we've actually 2 of them already went to their adoptive homes, and we're hoping the other 2 will be healed up soon enough to join them. But they've been getting daily foot soaks, getting medicated, pilled twice a day, and also drinking medicated water for months now, trying to recover from this illness. And I mean, that might be why these people dumped them in the pond in the first place. I mean, I think there's 2 types of people that do it. Sometimes some people, they just can't be bothered, and they want to get their new chicks and they don't want to deal with the illness from last year's. So they dump them in the pond and say, "Hey, you're on your own now. Hopefully you survive. If not, well, you're not my problem anymore." The other type of person, I think, it means well. I think they got these birds and they realize, "Hey, I'm not giving them the life that they deserve. They need more than my bathtub."
Right.
So they let them go, thinking that they can survive, thinking that it would be a better life, but not realizing that they're just condemning them to a different sort of death.
So this is kind of like you were born free, you should live free, but no, it's that's the idealized image or version of that, and they usually do not have a good end. Do they make good pets? You say they stay in bathtubs when they are in people's homes. Do they make good pets? Do people end up loving their pet duck, or are they just a hassle and people should just stay away from, trying to get these domestic ducks and trying to think that they can be good companions?
Well, they are very sweet animals. Those 2 ducks I just mentioned, actually, we've named one of them Mr. Cuddles and the other one Mrs. Puddles. Because they're real sweethearts. They love to cuddle. They're
Really?
very, very friendly, a lot of personality to them. But again, they're a lot of work. I mean, the fact that, how much medical care that we need to give them, and they're jumbo pekins, so they're enormous. That's why their foot infection is such a serious issue, and it's been taking months to heal. So I think that if someone does want to get a duck, they need to know what they're signing up for. They need to know that they can provide a pond in their backyard, that they can provide a predator-proof night enclosure, that they will need to have an avian vet that's likely going to charge more money than your typical vet, and maybe harder to access. So I'm not against people adopting birds, but just like it is for every other species. I mean, people should adopt. They shouldn't shop, and they need to know what they're signing up for.
How big are we talking about these ducks?
Jumbo pekins, they're very, very large. So ducks really they can vary though. They can be 4 pounds, they can be 12 pounds. They can get to be very, very large.
And with wingspan, are we talking like 3 feet, 5 feet? 2
Oh, not quite that big. Not quite that big.
Okay,
but,
so normal size, bigger than a pigeon.
Yeah. If you look at your wild ducks, the domestic duck could be 3 or 4 times that size.
Okay, and then you say you can cuddle a duck?
Oh, yeah. They're very, very sweet animals, especially Pekin ducks. They're the ones that have been bred the longest. And unfortunately, the factory farm industry, they bred them to be docile so that they wouldn't fight back when they're being handled, when they're being shoved into these filthy sheds with the other ducks. And that so they wouldn't fight amongst each other as much. And also they wouldn't, they'd be easier to handle when the farmer goes in and grabs them roughly and brings them to that slaughterhouse.
And they're Pekin ducks, Pekin?
Correct. Yes.
Pekin. And and you find them in the restaurant trade. When you order Long Island, I've seen stuffed Long Island duck in some restaurant years ago. Is that still popular?
Well, thankfully, it's veganism is getting more popular, and people eating meat, that's decreasing. But obviously, a lot of people are still doing it. A lot of people are still thinking of these animals as delicacies, not as individuals. But most of them aren't thinking about the cruelty that these animals endured. I mean, if you're talking about cruelty, you think about foie gras, which is also done to ducks. Typically, in the foie gras industry, at one point it was Pekin ducks, another point it was geese. Now it's typically they use a sterile crossbreed of Pekin ducks and Muscovy ducks. They'll forcibly inseminate one or the other with the other's seed, and then they will get this sterile hybrid that is very large, but is also very sweet. So they're easy to handle. They'll often cut off the end of their beaks. They'll cut off their toes so that it'll cut down on the self-mutilation that they're actually able to do. And it will stop them from cannibalizing other birds because they're in such horrible conditions. So this is actually, it's obviously extremely cruel, but it's cheaper for these farmers to do rather than to give them the space and the enrichment that they deserve. For those who don't know what foie gras is, after these animals are mutilated, the farmers will shove a metal pipe down their throat and force feed them so that they gain an abnormally large liver, many times the normal size. It could be 10 times the normal liver. And it basically gives them an extreme form of liver disease. And then these animals are killed, and then that liver is served up as a delicacy.
I mean, there's duck foie gras, but there's also goose, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the duck variety. And in some areas, isn't goose foie gras illegal, like in parts of California?
Well, even in New York City, all sorts of foie gras is illegal. And I believe the same is for California. Yeah. I mean, like I said, this is a dying industry, but there are still 1 million ducks killed every single year for their meat right here on Long Island.
I mean, I see ducks hanging when I pass by the Chinatowns. I'll see ducks hanging from the storefronts. Are those aren't imported? Those are domestic American bred duck?
Yeah, those ducks are being factory farmed right here in many of them right here in New York State and California and all throughout the U.S.
So even though they're called Peking duck, or they're likely a Pekin duck.
Yep. Yeah, those ducks are the ones that are being factory farmed right here in the U.S., exempt from almost all of our animal cruelty statutes.
Right now, we've come out of Easter. Is it still a busy time for your group, Lion, in terms of the abandonment and what you're seeing out there with the birds?
I mean, things are just heating up. We were rescuing a lot of yearlings, in this past month. I'm sure we'll continue to rescue those. But we've already been rescuing a lot of little ducklings. I mean, talking about keeping ducks in a tub, there was we very rarely will accept owner surrenders because we're simply rescuing hundreds of animals from cruelty cases and abandonment just here on Long Island every single year. So we don't have a capacity, in my perspective, really enable these people to say, hey, I'm going to dump these animals on you, and then I'm going to get more birds next Easter. That doesn't really interest me. And even if I, if I wanted to help those people out, I don't have the capacity to take it because there are just so many animals in need of homes. But we made an exception. Last week, we ended up taking in 2 ducklings from a grandfather who bought those ducklings in Pennsylvania for his grandchildren, thinking he would give them to them on Easter. Yeah. So he raised them for 2.5 weeks in his bathtub. And when we got them, they appeared to be permanently crippled. Oh. And we brought them right to the vet. And the vet told us, thankfully, that she thought we can reverse their conditions now that we have them. But they were slipping and sliding in his bathtub. They were, they were on improper nutrition. And that nutrition was, what he was told to feed them by the people he bought them from. But ducks, they need very specialized nutrition. They need soft substrates, especially when they're young. You put them in a bathtub, they're going to slip and slide and hurt their little legs, and those legs will never develop properly. So one of them has turned around. The other one, we're still waiting and seeing, and hopefully, his legs heal up. But it's not even like this is a rare thing. Basically, every owner surrender I've ever taken in has had severe leg issues due to malnutrition and improper substrates like this.
So people just don't know how to deal with them. They get into this, they find an ad, or they get a wild hair of an idea. Let's give ducks to the kids, or it's Easter. They get them, and it ends up being an enormous amount of pain and suffering for the ducks, for the animals.
I was just talking to someone this morning too about a teacher who did a hatching project and ended up she kept one of the chicks because the chicks had splayed legs, and she didn't send them back to the farm because she was afraid that they were going to kill that chick. So I informed her, well, all the chicks you already sent back to the farm, they're probably already dead, because typically these farmers, they don't want the pathogens from the school to then be integrated into their flocks. And even if they did keep them, a few more weeks, they're going to slaughter them. So she was horrified to learn that. And then, she was all worried about this little chick, and we'll see. I'm going to bring that chick to the vet. Hopefully we can fix that chick up, and hopefully he'll have a happier ending than his friends. But I told her too, we need to talk to your school. We need to stop these hatching projects, because we need to stop this cycle. Because again, I'm not going to continue to take birds from people when they're just going to continue to condemn these animals to a lifetime of suffering.
So John, how many animals have you saved just in the last couple of years, you think?
Probably about 1,000 domestic fowl, mostly ducks, in the past 2 years.
And where do you find homes? Like, you save them, do you adopt? Where do you place them after you save them? Who takes them in?
Yeah, we have to find reputable homes and sanctuaries all over the country, and honestly, most of our placements are homes. We will talk to people and vet them out and make sure that they know what they're getting into, and that they have a proper veterinarian and a predator-proof setup, that they can accommodate these animals. But sanctuaries typically are totally overburdened. They're already overflowing with these animals, and they have very, very little space to accommodate the new ones that are coming in. I mean, if we were to only place in sanctuaries, I mean, I could fill up a brand new sanctuary or 2 new sanctuaries every single year with the amount of animals that we rescue. So we're always looking for people who want to adopt ducks and give them the home and the life that they deserve. At
their home, or not? You're not talking about looking for people to start sanctuaries, but looking for people who are willing to take them in and cuddle these ducks, right?
Well, it depends on the duck. Some ducks like to be cuddled, and some ducks like to be left alone, in that large, spacious backyard. I mean, that's important. People need acreage. They can't, you can't have, a duck in an apartment. You can't expect that when you get a duck that he's going to want your attention. Some of them do, some of them don't. They all have their individual personalities, and we need to respect that. So anyone who is interested in adopting a duck needs to make sure that they can provide them with a pond, that they can provide them with a predator-proof night enclosure, that if they're, come spring, if the males are getting too matey, I mean, ducks, honestly, even wild ducks, they have a lot of sexual aggression in the spring mating season. Wild ducks, it lasts only a couple weeks. With domestic ducks, it can last many months, sometimes 3 seasons. So people need to know that and be prepared for that and be able to manage that as well.
Oh, so do you spay and neuter a duck?
It's very difficult to spay or neuter a duck. They have it's a very complicated procedure. And they have very little blood in their body. They don't clot well. So really what you need to do is just manage it and keep an eye on things. And, you can separate them with like puppy exercise pens so that they can, the guy can see his girl, but she can get a break from him.
Wait a minute. Now, you're presuming that if you're going to adopt ducks, you have to adopt a pair. And it's better if you have a male-female thing. So a couple is preferred?
Not necessarily. I try to talk people into it. A lot of times people will contact me and say, hey, I have 2 boys and I want to get them, some girls. And I say, oh, so you don't have any girls? And they say, oh, no, I don't. I'm just looking for girls. Well, most of the ducks being abandoned to the wild are males. And most of the time, males will get along well with other males. They'll bond with them. So I try to encourage people, hey, if you don't have any girls, well, take in a bachelor flock, a Drake squad. And you still need to be prepared to separate them as needed, because there's a lot of gender fluidity in waterfowl. But the males are a little more robust, and if they're getting picked on by another male, they can fight back a little better. While the females not so much. So a lot of times people will you'll have a male and you have a lot of females, and there's one male who just is mating that other female too much, and it could be a very, very serious problem. So I tell people they need to be prepared. They need to be prepared for that. And remember, these ducks can live 10 to 15 years, and you need to be ready to give them medical treatment, and you need to be ready to deal with these mating problems if they do arise.
So you can have duck fights, and I guess if people are all happy, you can also have chicks.
Oh, I always tell people don't breed them at all. I mean, that's a requirement in every adoption contract that that we make people sign, because there's enough animals out here. Just like there's an overpopulation of dogs and cats. There's a major overpopulation of these domestic animals.
Well, wait a minute. What if you have no choice? I mean, if you have a male and a female, I mean, they're not intentionally breeding them, but the ducks do what ducks do. How do you prevent that? You have to separate them during the times when they are, as you say, matey.
Well, luckily, birds lay eggs. And if you collect the eggs every single day, then you don't need to worry about that problem, because it takes weeks for that egg to incubate before any life is formed. So you just need to be sure you're collecting those duck eggs every single day, and that's how you prevent birds from being born.
And I guess people who have these domesticated ducks that have the eggs, people can eat the eggs if they were not vegan.
Well, yeah, we tell people to actually feed the eggs back to the birds. I mean, these birds have been, wild birds, they lay significantly less eggs than domesticated birds. So domestic birds, they end up having egg laying problems sometimes. Like I said, they're more susceptible to illnesses and injuries than the wild birds. So in the wild, they'll lay a very, maybe a clutch or 2 of eggs a year. Whereas in these domestic birds, they are laying eggs sometimes every single day, and it's not good for them. So what I encourage people to do is take that egg, cook it up, and feed it back to that bird, and they'll enjoy it, and their life will be better because of it.
Now, before I ask the big question, the question comes up, you mentioned earlier, the poop issue. That is maybe one of the bigger problems about adopting ducks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't recommend anyone keeps them inside. We have to keep them indoors sometimes when they're, being triaged, when they have, serious medical issues. And it's a full clean every single day. And, sometimes twice a day. They are very, very messy animals, very sweet, very, very wonderful animals, but very, very messy and a lot of work.
All right. So I mentioned all those things because it's all about education. If people want to have a duck, and if they get these things for Easter and and they commit, they shouldn't abandon them, because Lion's there to save them and then seek homes for these ducks. But now the question is, should people adopt? Should people go? And if they want to try their hand at adopting ducks, what do they do?
I always tell people that they should foster first. You hook up with your local waterfowl rescue and tell them, you're interested in fostering before you adopt. So that way you can figure it out, and you commit to a certain amount of time. You can get to know ducks and get to know exactly what it entails before you commit to 10 to 15 years.
Because it's, I mean, that's a big commitment. We can't go on vacation because who's going to take care of the ducks? That's a big one, right?
They need a babysitter, just like your dog or cat needs a babysitter. We actually just went away for this weekend, and up to visit a sanctuary where we placed over 80 animals. But we needed to have someone actually live in at our home while we were gone and take care of pill those two pecans and soak their feet and to clean up their poop.
It's a full-time thing. So, and yet, like other animals who become our animal companions, they can provide a tremendous amount of their sources of love as well, right?
Like I said, some ducks though they love to cuddle. Some ducks don't. So I just think I'd like to stress that you don't know exactly what you're signing up for when you order a duck online. But when you when you adopt a duck, you can talk to the that adoption agency, that waterfowl rescue, about what you're looking for, and make sure that you make sure that you're getting the duck that's right for you, because you don't want to force a duck that wants to spend all his time in a pond to be hugging with you or playing with your children. But you also, on the other hand, you may get a duck who does want that. Yeah. And you want to make sure that you're willing and able to provide that.
Now, if you don't have a pond, is a swimming pool or some kind of above ground pool, is that adequate for a duck?
Well, you can put them in a swimming pool. I guess, that won't do so well for your, I think you need a lot of chlorine for that. No one wants to swim in that.
Yeah.
A pond is definitely the most ideal thing. The minimum that people would need to care for a duck are kiddie pools. And depending how many ducks, you may need multiple of them. And you're going to need to change those probably at least twice a day. So that's a lot of work.
Change the water twice a day?
Twice a day. Yep.
Boy, that leaves drought-plagued California out of the question, maybe. But but this is part of the question. I mean, you have all these ducks, and like right now, how many ducks do you have up for adoption?
Right now, I have probably about 24 ducks up for adoption, and the season just started. So
at your peak, how many will there be?
I think the most ducks we've ever had at one time was about 70 amongst all our foster homes.
70.
So yeah, I don't keep all of them, with me. That's way more ducks than I can handle. But thankfully, we have a good network of people who will help us care for these animals.
Yeah. How long do you keep your friends, though?
What?
How long do you keep your friends, though?
Oh yeah. It's. You don't have time for much else when you're caring for ducks.
What I'm saying is that you might alienate all your friends by foisting ducks on them.
Oh yeah, well you can't just expect one of your friends to know what he's doing either.
Yeah.
We've been at this for many years. We've been rescuing ducks since I think we rescued my first duck in 2014. So we've developed quite the list of contacts that can help us care for these animals. Typically, we're always trying to adopt ducks out as fast as we're rescuing them. So it's rare for us to get up to such a high number. But sometimes, we'll come across a situation where there's 20 ducks or even 40 or even 60 ducks, like one situation we came across last year.
How bad is it this year? I mean, in terms of other years, relative to the other years.
Well, this year is pretty rough so far, but it's still early. I'm hoping that that things will be better this year, because we've gotten a lot of news coverage to this issue locally. Getting the word out that these animals are not Easter gifts, that they're not products, and that it's illegal to abandon them in New York State.
Well, you get the word out. But the best thing is for the people to understand they shouldn't patronize or get involved in this thing in the first place by patronizing the farms and by buying these chicks or buying ducklings. If they didn't do it, you wouldn't have this problem.
Yeah, people need to realize these animals are not science experiments, that they're not Easter props, and they're not pets. If you're so inclined, you love ducks and you really want to care for them, adoption is an option. But for most people, I wouldn't recommend it. You really need to dedicate, a decade of your life to caring for these animals, just like you would a dog. But your duck can't join you on a trip like maybe your dog can. You can't take him for a walk in the park. You need to be home. You need to be caring for him. It's like having a little baby for a decade.
Well, this all could end if there were laws against the people who sell them, right?
Yeah, we need to ban the shipment of these animals via USPS, just like it's already been banned by UPS and by FedEx. Last year was particularly bad for both these animals being shipped. There were so many articles about these animals dying by the thousands because of shipping delays. I mean, a shipping delay, normally it doesn't really matter. You get your package one day late. But if you get these chicks or these ducklings a day late, you're going to open up a box of dead ducks.
Well, look, John, once again, enlightening in terms. I mean, I know this is it's not a hobby. It's your passion. It's your avocation, to go out there and try to save all these domesticated waterfowl that are out there abandoned in your neck of the woods. And is this a thing that anyone, if they're listening anywhere in the United States at least, or maybe Canada, if they go out and check their ponds and maybe they'd find some abandoned ducks right now?
This is a widespread problem. Most people don't realize how many domestic ducks they probably have in their community. And they don't realize that these ducks are literally sitting ducks for predators or cruel people.
Yeah. So if people want to inquire about either adoption or starting their own, not necessarily a sanctuary, but their own rescue type of effort in their local community, how can they model Lion, your group, or how can they contact you at Lion?
Yeah, they can reach us at humanelongisland.org.
humanelongisland.org. And yeah, it's fitting that Long Island, I've seen it so many times on menus in my day, the Long Island duck, and you're out there saving the Long Island ducks from a fate possibly worse than the restaurant, which is to be brought into the home and then abandoned. And then who knows what happens to them. So thank you, John, once again for spending time with us and for letting people know about this problem. And good luck when will your Easter season be over in terms of the rise and maybe being able to tamp down this issue so that it's normal again?
Yeah, usually come fall, things slow down.
Wow.
We'll rescue a few ducks, in the winter months, but usually, we've rescued most of them by fall, or the ones we didn't rescue have died by then. Last year with the pandemic, this problem was worse than ever before because a lot of people actually did home hatching projects when their kids were in quarantine. They wanted to keep their kids busy, so they got lots of little ducklings. So we actually rescued, we didn't slow down at all last year. Pretty much stayed heavy, all the way up until this season. So hopefully 2021 is kinder to us and the ducks.
Okay. John D. Leonardo, thank you very much for being on the PETA podcast.
Thank you for having me, Emil.
PETA's John D. Leonardo on how he saves abandoned ducks in his free time and how he hopes to soon show others how to do the same as the post-Easter abandoned duck problem gets worse in the U.S. Go to Long Island Orchestrating for Nature. That's LION. How's that for an acronym? Long Island Orchestrating for Nature. They're at www.humanelongisland.org. And that's our show for today. Hey, thank you for listening. Don't forget to send a link of this show to your friends. They may like it. Hey, tell them you like the PETA podcast. You can contact us at PETA.org. For me, on Twitter, at Emil Amok. That's EMILAMOK. Or on AMOK.com. Or you can see my work at ALDEF, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund. That's at ALDEF, AALDEF.org/blog. Once again, thank you for listening. Check out all our episodes on your favorite podcast app or on Apple Podcasts, where you can rate and review the show. Hey, it helps get the word out about the issues you care about. Our music is provided by Carbonworks. Check them out on YouTube. And join us again next time for more insight into animal rights and the fight for a cruelty-free world on the PETA Podcast. I'm Emil Guillermo.